Good morning, everybody. I wanted to go over today with a kind of new idea that I got on the way walking to work. This has a little bit to do with a show that I watched on Netflix that made kind of the statement that the present is the same as the past, is the same as the future. That's a rough kind of going over of how I remember it. It was a little bit more concise than that, but essentially, it notes that right now what's happening, there's a part of the future in it, and it's very light and subtle. And if we can pay attention to that is, or figure out what that is, then we can kind of predict the future. Um, and I was thinking about this as I was walking to work, and essentially it clicked to me with a parallel kind of thought that I had about the generational health. Now, I'm going to try to play that out in a scenario so it can make some more sense to you guys. So, imagine that there was a whole generation impacted by a war, let's say, yes, that has happened, and then that generation actually will be affected strongly physically, mentally, and emotionally by this thing. This will shape the person's character later on in life. Kids that grew up in that era, parents that grew up in the era, they're going to have two different ways of going through life because what they had for their kind of moral stability to build their character is changed. The adults have a different version than the children in that era, so we have this thing. The adults then pass away, and the children inherit this way of life that no longer makes sense. Uh, in the sense of that they have not went through the full adult experience of it, and as they go through life now as adults, they're trying to solve for their personality or how they feel good or what they should do for work or these kind of things. As they're trying to solve for that, the missing reality causes a shift in them. Most people are not able to solve what that thing is, so the next generation inherits this kind of distortion from two generations ago and of the current generation that just passed. Now, in this way, the child has no knowledge of the war at all. It was two generations ago or a generation ago. They grew up in a life that has long since shifted back to the new normal. Trying to navigate this kind of life, again, because none of the background information is kind of said to the child, there again becomes a thing where they start forming their character. The only way to actually appropriately form this character is to know about the past, in a sense, know why their parents became their parents and what things were impacting on them, so they can see how the character of the parents was developed. In this way, you can see why they have their shortcomings they have, why the challenges are the challenges that they have, and how that has affected them parenting you as the new child growing up. When you kind of come to this conclusion, you can then start to live a life that is more accustomed to you as an individual. And again, this is going to be different than society because, again, a whole society can be affected by something like a war. And they just pass it down to the next generation like this. But in the present moment, this thing for that child is so subtle that they wouldn't even notice that it was there. But it was a way of life that was passed down to them, and they don't know where it came from. And in not knowing where it came from, this kind of quiet, subtle thing starts to predict their future in the sense that the mental, physical, and emotional characteristics uh, that were passed down from kind of a survival mentality of the previous generation is now in the child as an absolute way of navigating life. That's what was passed down. Right? That's the kind of concept, a deeper concept of generational health and how it's passed down. This child now starts to live their life in this way, not knowing that they're afraid of um, dark places because their parents were afraid of dark places, which happened to them when they were in some situation, that kind of thing. So I think that this would be that subtle thing that has so much hold on the whole person's way of life, and they would never ever see it that way in kind of doing what we commonly think of as health. We are doing things that are truly compensations for the challenge that was for the generation previous us. Right? We're kind of showing their compensations, and these compensations are not actually in line with um, how humans should live, and therefore the health challenges come about. These health challenges kind of signaling a need for change in some way, and the person can often change through life experiences. But again, reclaiming one's personality is a little bit trickier than that. Changing those characteristics. This is done by a way that I'm not going to get into in this video, but I just wanted to kind of highlight that way of thinking about a kind of whisper of the past in the present that predicts the future. This is my conclusion with that. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into the understanding of self-care and where it comes from, and how it is extremely beneficial and how it can easily be hidden right in front of you. That too is a very good point. All right, have a great day.